In 2022, I had cycled perhaps 70% of the Irish coastline as part of the Irish Coast Cycle, my ambition being to completely cycle around Ireland. Not all at once, but in stages. So as autumn turned to winter and winter turned to spring, I took a break in Lanzarote and did some cycling there. But I also did some planning. I got all my gear out, I weighed things, I patched things, I worked out exactly how many iPhone chargers I could get out of my power banks, and I started to plan. One of the things I decided I was going to do was go to Scotland, and I was going to cycle the Scottish Islands and Highlands. So that's an early version of the map I intended to do. But the other thing I knew I was going to do was return to cycling the Irish coast. So I started the Irish coast again a little bit earlier than intended at the start of May when I cycled from Westport to Achill Island and back. There's a special reason I ended up doing that. It's sad, and I'll talk about it a bit into the video. But for now, let's have a look at that trip. I had, of course, kept training over winter, long cycles around Dublin and hikes in the mountains nearby, including a winter swim in the pools above Glendalough. And let me tell you, if you want to toughen yourself up, go for a swim there in winter. It'll work. So in 2022, I'd covered the coastline from Galway up to Westport. So this little trip to Achill filled out a bit of the remaining coast from Westport to Sligo. Basically from Westport to Keel. This would have been days 28 and 29 of the Irish Coast Cycle, although my day count's a little imprecise. Last year I rolled a couple of days into one to make for videos of significant length or sufficient length, so might be day 30 or day 31, but you get the idea. So in a usual mess of entertaining map reading, my route direction had sent me on a cycle track that doesn't really exist yet. So I had to go back on the main road, and now we're on sections of it that kind of exist, but I suspect I'm finished. But I guess I'll just follow them and see where I get to. So I'm now on a nice stretch of the Westport to Achill Greenway. I had a terrible time getting out of the train station. Got very lost in heavy traffic, and it looks like they're working on the bit of the Greenway nearest Westport, so some of it's impassable and you have to get onto the very nasty main road. So there's a Greenway that runs from Westport all the way to Achill, and indeed an extension on Achill Island itself that runs until near Ted's pub. However, I was cycling right at the start of May, and although the Greenway was marked on the map and so my navigation system was directing me onto it, near Westport it hadn't been built yet, and there was ongoing construction, JCBs, etc. that I kept coming across. I suspect by now all that is finished, so if you decide to cycle this, and I highly recommend it, you won't have to deal with that at all. These sections we're on now are once you get to Newport. After Newport, it's very much finished. Fantastic surface, completely off-road. You don't really know the roads exist here at all. You don't really touch them at all, in fact, until you get to Achill Island and come down onto Achill Sound Bridge. This is the closest, in fact, you get to the road, this little stretch with a couple of houses on it up a laneway. I was racing against time here because I was trying to get to an event on Achill, and that's what I referred to in the introduction. A friend of mine who I knew from campaigning against Shell Oil, Finbar Kafki, had gone to Ukraine, unknown to us, volunteered and unfortunately had been killed by the Russians. So there was a commemoration event organised by his family for him in Achill that I was cycling to. So I went to that and then cycled on from Ted's pub to Keel, where I camped. That involved a cycle in pitch dark from the pub to where I was going to camp by the lake, but I made it and got the tent up, and next morning I woke to a stunning sunrise. There are a number of locations on Achill where people commonly wild camp. I'd picked Keel, and specifically Keel Lough, because I had wild camped there with the group 20 years previously. I knew I'd be setting up in the dark, so at least it would be slightly familiar to me. So this is last night's camp. Keel Beach on Achill Island. I'm just in the process of packing up. We'd midges this morning, but thankfully they've gone away. And I had eggs and coffee, and that was very nice. Just packed up the tent. Heading back to Westport, but I think I'll do a little bit of a spin around the island first. Just trying to decide which way to go. I want to scout out a couple of potential camping spots rather than anything else. Another spot that people often wild camp on Achill is under the cliffs here at Keel. You'll see camper vans down here as well, but there is also an official caravan camping park in Keel that wasn't open at the time I was there, and I doubt even if it was they'd have accepted a midnight check-in from somebody who'd had a few pints, but that would also be an option if you want a bit of comfort. Now, I had intended to do a bit more exploring the island and then realised that I hadn't factored in how long it would take for me to cycle back to the train station to catch my train, and instead I then had to hightail it off the island and along the Greenway. This, by the way, is far from the first time I've made such an error. I seem to be not great at timetabling returns, perhaps because I don't really want to make them. Anyway, having realised I was pushed for time, I was going to have to head across the island. Here's some road footage here to give you an idea of cycling conditions. Not much traffic at this time of year. Here's the bridge onto the mainland. That's the one bit that's going to be a bit busy. And then the entrance onto the Greenway. As you can see, the Greenway very quickly turns into something that isn't a road at all. It's just the old railway track. The sections you saw yesterday were the ones from Westport to Mulvanny. These pieces I'm showing you now are the ones from Achill Sound to Mulvanny, so the missing bits. I think the Achill Sound to Mulvanny section of the Greenway is probably the most beautiful. It's over bog and by the coast. The section to Newport and then on to Westport is more through agricultural farmland. Still a lot going for that section as well, but I think it's hard to see something more stunning than this landscape I'm going through. This is very early in the season too. It's May, I think May the 1st or May the 2nd, and so there were very few cyclists or pedestrians on it, apart from right at the start of this bit where there was some sort of community running event going on. There are certainly spots along the Greenway where you could wild camp if you were making a much larger distance, maybe coming from somewhere south of Westport or coming from somewhere north onto the Greenway itself. So this was days 28 and 29 of the Irish Coast Cycle. In about a week's time, I'm going to head south. I'm going to be going to Tralee and I'm going to be cycling Dingle and then all the way up from Dingle to Galway. I'm going to end this video with another video I made shortly after Finbar was killed in Ukraine at the end of the Battle of Bakhmut. And it's photographs of him during the Shell to Sea struggle in Mayo. So that was against an experimental gas pipeline and refinery. The voice singing on it is him, the song Glen Gad Strand. I'm pretty sure what he wrote the lyrics for it, and it's outside Mountjoy Prison in Dublin. I think on one of the times Moore Harrington was imprisoned, but not 100% sure about that. And then the last image on it is him while he was in Rojava fighting ISIS as part of the Syrian Democratic Forces, or as they were previously called, the YPG. So left-wing Kurdish feminist militia, essentially. I wanted to add this at the end because if people are finding out about Achill via the video, I'd like them to know about him. His commemoration was held in Ted's pub on the island. He was obviously from the island. And the following day, a lot of the people who attended that commemoration went to a memorial stone on the island to another local who was killed decades previously while fighting for the Republican side in the Spanish Civil War.
'Tis one law for the multinational and another for the rest of the land. And the dogs they started tearing up the lovely Glengad strand. There the captain looked out from his bridge, and his heart it filled with woe. There were trawlers, ribs and kayaks, and a hunger strike on the shore. The shellbucks call, we are waiting to winch your pipe to land. But no answering signal did go in to the lovely Glengad strand. The captain said, boys, I've seen enough. This crack here, it is no joke. We'll take the sledge to Don Crane tonight, and we'll let on that she has broke. Well, the tears, they swept down the shell boys' cheeks. They cried, a wheelia wallia. And a roar down from the hillside came, a rail a shell consolia. Now this battle we have won it well, but our long war it still goes on. It's been forced on us by gangsters who know the value of nothing. Sing loud the name of Shell to Sea, our staunch and stalwart band. For if needs be again, we'll join to defend the lovely Glengad strand. Go to Mayo.
If you've randomly stumbled across this video, give the channel a follow and check out my playlist for the Irish Coast Cycle. You've got 27 other videos waiting for you on that already, and more to come. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up.